Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you had a fantastic week so far. And this week I'm with Tim. We were talking about everything networking, marketing, and also FSB because he is a member and someone who shares the wonders that FSB can do for a business owner as well. And I'll leave all of his links in the description down below. Thank you ever so much for joining me once again. And I'm now going to hand over to Tim to introduce a little bit more about him and FSB. And enjoy the interview. And I'll see you very, very soon.
Well, I'm Tim Brock. I'm from the FSB, and we basically support small business owners in lots of different ways.
Fantastic. And welcome, Tim, to the podcast. It's great to have you on. And, you know, for me, it's interesting because obviously I've known of FSB for 3.5 years, 4 years. Somewhere around there. I used to be a very strong networker at one of their main events here in Salisbury that I'm unsure whether it's coming back. Maybe you can enlighten me on that at a later date as well. But, you know, I think it's interesting, and I know we were discussing a little bit before the podcast started about some of the key issues that a lot of small business owners really run into. I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned late payments as one, which I think is quite common, or, you know, having issues around payments. I mean, what in your experience have you found that is there a solution? Because people ask me all the time, like, how do you handle payments? How do you know, because at the end of the day, if you're running a business, you need to make sure you've got money coming through the door, because if you run out of money, you go out of business, right?
Exactly. And is there a solution? I think it's more widespread than we think, and certainly the research shows that. And the troubling point is actually what it is. It's one of the common causes of making people actually go out of business. It's not just an inconvenience and keep you up at night. It is going to finish your business. And to the extent that the research shows next year, we could lose up to 440,000 small businesses because they haven't been paid on time and they can't honour their commitments. And that's pretty bloody shocking. That's really shocking. In terms of what you can do about it, I mean, there's for simple things, you know, and we get it a lot because we do a lot of sort of money chasing as well, or we give advice about, and we can send out letters and things to chase it up. But just having a contract in place, just having terms and conditions, you know, you'd be surprised the number of people who do business and then don't get paid. And you say, well, what does it say in your terms and conditions? We haven't got any. Okay, well, it would help if you sort of laid out, you know, when you expect to get paid, how you expect to pay. If there was a problem, you know, if someone wasn't happy, what's the recourse, you know, to ultimately get that payment. Obviously getting invoices out on time, correct invoicing, you know, a lot of people don't even do that. You know, getting it all correctly done, chasing it up on time, checking out the people you're doing business with. You know, it's not difficult these days. Certainly with bigger clients, we've all got, you know, everyone's got credit history. And you'd be well suited to actually checking them out beforehand. Don't just assume. And basically in communication as well. And COVID especially, we've all got problems. You know, you know, I'm sure a lot of people, they want to pay, but they can't necessarily pay. But just pick up the phone and talk to the people and say, look, I can't pay it all. Can I just pay half now and half later? And just having that conversation can rather than just ignoring it. So there's a lot of bad practice out there and it could be improved, but ultimately, and also the small businesses, the big guys as well are quite bad, you know, big guys who could afford to, but it's sort of not in their nature, you know, 60 days is normal. And we're doing a lot of lobbying saying, well, it's not normal. Come on, 30 days is actually quite a bit if you're a small business waiting a whole month to get your money in. We're even pushing actually now for board members, board directors, or a board director to be responsible for checking actually that you are paying the small guys on time, because it doesn't suit your purpose if they're all going out of business. So a bit of corporate responsibility won't go amiss either.
No, and I think it's a really important point. I think it's important that you mention it, because I think it comes out, and that's why I want to ask you first, because it comes back to education. And I think that's the key thing. I think, you know, you need to educate your client, but also you need to be transparent and also, you know, set those expectations with that client. You know, we say up front, you know, we expect 50% of whatever the project cost is up front, right, as a security deposit, right? That just sits in my bank account until the project's finished, right? It's not like I'm going to go and spend it, but it's more just to secure that I'm not then having to be like, oh my God, where is the rest of this money coming from? Or where's this money coming from? And also it's a validation for us to make sure that the person is 100% serious about what we're doing and how we're doing it as well. And I think that a lot of businesses, especially at the beginning, and I was in this case, especially at the beginning as well, where they're really concerned, or they're really kind of like, especially as they up their prices, or especially as they like to maybe tweak their terms, or they maybe after watching this podcast they're like, well, actually, yeah, I actually need to get that sorted. I need to get those terms and conditions in. I need to really do that. I mean, what advice would you give from your experience with talking to business owners or etc. give to people who are looking to kind of proactively change how they operate their business, right? So let's say a business is not got anything in place right now at all, but then they want to go to their client list that they've got at the moment, that they're doing maybe some retail work for, or they're doing some retainer-based work for, however their business is run, and they want to put these boundaries in place. I mean, what would you say to those people? Because I imagine there's a sector of businesses that are going to find that very hard, right, to do, because they've done it the way they've done it for however long, and they don't want to lose the business because of it.
I think if you're already doing business with someone, you could certainly say the contract's already started. You can't really introduce a new contract, and I guess it's going to differ from client to client, isn't it? And it was never heard of before, was it? But you pay before they do it, But now I think people are quite used to paying something up front, because that's the state we've got ourselves into. You just can't rely now on waiting till the job's done, then hoping they'll give you all the money. We give out loads and loads of advice, and that's free to any small business. You don't have to be a member to get a lot of our advice. But then if you suddenly say, well, what sort of should I, where do I get terms and conditions? And if you want a template document, then that's what we are giving out to members. It's just one of 1,500 documents we have, because whether it's a good or service, the terms are basically the same. I'm going to do a job for you. I expect payment. This is when I expect it. And if you're not happy, this is how we're going to sort it. And that should be in place going forward, even if some of the older customers aren't on it. And again, also actually and it does cost sleepless nights, doesn't it? And also saying to people, if someone is messing you about and they're really not paying, is it worth having them as a client? Sometimes you just have to. It's difficult in the early days when you're small, you want everybody, but if someone's a pain and causing you pain, maybe just pass them on to someone else and not deal with them ultimately.
Yeah, and I really relate to that, because recently, we've been fortunate enough to have a lot of quite explosive growth the last couple of years, which in turn means my costs have basically tripled, right? Like my operational costs and the things we do, and the equipment we have, and etc. and everything is kind of gone up, along with inflation, of course, that happens naturally, right? But the point there is, some older clients have come back to me, and there's nothing to do with them, it's not their fault at all, but they've come back to me and they've said, oh, hi Colin, we've got this job, we'd love you to do it, blah 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 blah. And then when it comes to budget conversations, we're still talking at the same levels we were 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I'm just like, I can't do that anymore, right? I can't, because if I do that, it's going to spend the same amount of time than I could spend, or energy, or resources that I have to give to it, for me to make if I did the same amount of resources now, I'll make 4 times as more now, right? From a different client. So it doesn't make much sense for me as a business owner to say yes to every client still. Now, part of the growth of a business is you're going to lose those early clients, and that hurts, right? It does, because they're people who believed in you when you were nothing, and we were just starting out, and you had a pipe dream, and you had a dream, and etc. But I think it's really important to establish that, firstly, your business is going to grow, and your costs should increase, and you should be paid what you're worth. But also that it's okay to say to some people, like, if someone's going to heckle you, or someone wants to bring you down on price and whatever, that in my opinion you shouldn't necessarily, unless you really want to work with that person, or there's different reasons doing it, then you should just stay to your guns, like, right, this is my price, that my prices are there for a reason, and that person needs to think whether that's valuable enough to them or not, right? And this could be your price is £250 or 2.5 grand. It's not even your over £1,000 mark, right? Which I think is a struggle for a lot of businesses as well. I mean, I know that the FSB does talk to a lot of businesses of different sizes and different scales, but have you seen in your experience people really struggling to, pay for a product or a service over £1,000? Like, is there like a psychological barrier to that? Like, you've gone to four figures now.
I think it depends what it is, doesn't it? And it sort of, I suppose it amazes me what people do spend on certain things, like a website for a business. Yes, you should be spending that. But it amazes me they might think nothing about getting some sort of contract and paying £500 for it because they don't know any different. But then I get more surprised when we say, well, actually, we do all that. It's going to cost you £147 a year. And they're going, let me think about that. And you think, well, you're just going to save £5,000. But they don't have the money. The thing is, as a startup, small business, you don't have, what money you've got. You probably do want to be spending on marketing and sales, and you don't want to be spending it on boring old paperwork, really. You should be spending it, but there's just another way of doing it, isn't it? It's not a £200 an hour job. It's it should be £200 a year if you know where to go, because again, it's not always rocket science. When you get bigger, and you've got 10 grand burning a hole in your pocket for sort of the more complex legal advice, most definitely. But I think just be choosy where you spend the money you don't always have. Going back to your supply, your contracts and your prices. I was talking to a printer last week. They saw, and there's many connected with the Brexit word, I think seven price increases last year alone in the supplies. And he said, where we used to say to people, here's a quote, you've got 4 months, that stands for 4 months or 6 months. He goes, now we can't even make it stand for a month because we know next month it's going to go up again. And he says unprecedented. And he said a container coming in beginning of last year, £1,000, end of last year, £14,000 for the same stuff in that container. And he was putting his hair out, and you think that's an interesting terms and agreement, isn't it? About how prices rocket for the same customers. How do you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, something which you need to either learn to adapt for, maybe not in that case where it's 14 times more expensive, but, or you learn to pivot, right? And you learn to change, and you learn to say, okay, well, this isn't feasible anymore, right? So suddenly, if, my cost went from £1,000 to 14,000 for the same thing, suddenly I don't have a profit margin. Right, there is no profit margin there, or I have to 14 times my acquisition to customers, right? And then I'm going to lose most of my customers. I would be surprised if any stayed if it was a 14 times increase, for example, right? So there's ways, I think, to establish that, but I think especially in many businesses, you need to learn to pivot. And there's a difference, I think, in understanding your worth and understanding that there's circumstances you can't control that have increased your costs to a unforeseeable level, right? Like, in the example you gave, but I'm sure there's been others that are not necessarily Brexit related, but in general, just things get more expensive through time, right? And also arguably, as you get better, you should actually get more expensive as well, right? For the same thing, right? Technically the service is the same, but as the product or the service or the person gets better at what they do, so should their price, so should their demand as well. And it's interesting that you mention about marketing. I mean, there's a lot of people we talk to that don't necessarily because there's a misconception a lot of the time where marketing budgets get cut first, right? Like they're always the budgets that get squished or always the budgets that get cut. And I always go, and of course, I say this from a quite biased perspective because I'm a marketer, right? It's what I do, I profit, right? But I always think it's a bit too cutting off your nose to spite your face situation, because if you're cutting your marketing budget, surely marketing, if it's done correctly, or marketing in general, the point of marketing is to increase the demand of your service or product, right? That's the goal of marketing. So why are you cutting that money, right? Because surely by cutting that, you're just screwing yourself in 6 months' time, or 2 months' time, or 3 months' time, because you're
Yes, it's a downward spiral, but I think it was nice to see, certainly when COVID first hit, actually, but the marketers were staying busy, and a lot of them said we were expecting it to fall off like it does when times, but they were still quite busy. And you think, oh, good, the tide has changed. People are realizing that, yeah, there's a lot you can cut, but don't cut that, because if you're now silent, don't expect to come back in a year's time and be up where you were. You won't be. You're going to be behind.
Yeah. And
I think the message got through.
Yeah, and it's really important, because if you, okay, cool, like pull back on what you're doing marketing wise, sure, right? Try to maybe like bring the costs down on some of your ad spend perhaps, or maybe go to like 1 blog a week instead of 4. Okay, sure, right? They're different to completely stopping it completely. Right, like some of the time we have to make consequences, and we have to make things that we have to change in the business to stay profitable. That's fine, right? Everyone's going to understand that, especially as COVID hit. Everyone, I think, went a bit of kind of like push the panic button a little bit, just until we work out, okay, well, what does the next 3 months look like, right? Like, but I also think it was quite a good wake up call for a lot of businesses, because they were suddenly thrust into a world where we don't know what we're going to be able to do in 3 months' time, right? We don't know we don't know how the dust is going to settle here. So what are you doing proactively every day? Is that going to a networking event? Is that writing a blog post? Is that making sure that you keep your customer base or your client base in the loop in regards to the fact that you're still existing, right? Because the fact of the matter is, then and also now, we're going to be in a position where there's unfortunately, quite a large, significant percentage of the businesses that were existing are not going to be there. They're not, because they're going to go bust for whatever reason. Maybe they were, maybe they took too risky moves to invest too much, so they don't have a lot of cash, etc. As we've discussed, But I think it's one of those things. I mean, what would you say to people who did pull their marketing, or maybe maybe are coming out now because it looks like we're moving towards the end of the pandemic, right? Whatever that looks like, whatever that means, right? What would you say to people right now in regards to like, in your experience, what would you suggest they do with marketing specifically? Because I still think there's some hesitance around how do you do it? Should you do it? Is it the right time to do it, etc.?
I think we've all learned a lot about social media, haven't we? Whether we've liked it or not. And certainly that's got to be the biggest winner out of the whole COVID thing, about if you want to be seen. And we haven't done the research on it, but we must have advanced 2 or 3 years in social media use, or people to the stage now actually where even if people don't want to, you say, look, you don't have an option anymore. You don't have a choice. You've got to get with it. And even now, isn't it, whether it's an age thing, I don't know, but you just meet people now who say, oh, I don't like this social media. And you go, well, I just don't know what you can do, because your competitors are all going to be doing it. You've just got to get with it, whether that's employing a young person to do it all for you. But I think that's exciting, and that really has moved on a bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a great set of opportunities that come from it, though, because as more people see the power of social media, it's been really interesting talking to people or potential clients or clients about TikTok, right? Because there's a massive opportunity, but people still believe, which I understand, that it's for TikTok dances or it's for young teens, etc., to just mess around on, right? But there is now specifically huge amounts of value in having a TikTok presence, even if that's just picking up your phone and doing some exploratory videos, or explaining what you do in your business, or how it's valuable, or how you can start using this, depending on what you do. It's hugely valuable, because that's where part of the attention is, right? We've seen it across social as they've changed and so on. The kids, so to speak, never want to be where their parents are, right? Like we saw this with Facebook and Instagram, right? When Instagram became really popular, it was because Facebook was popular, and then it became the kind of old thing to do where all the parents hung out, and all kids went, nope, see ya. I'm going to go to Instagram, right? And the same thing happened, because as the older generations moved to Instagram, the kids went, okay, well, where now, right? So, if you want to know, right, and a tip that, we say a lot is have a conversation with teenagers. Have a conversation about what platforms are they using, right? If you want to know where the attention's going to be in 5, 6 years, 10 years, 15 years, go and ask people who are starting to use, so in that really starting 12 through till like 17, look at that demographic and see where their attention is. Because if their attention is on Snapchat, if their attention is on TikTok, if their attention is on this new app that hasn't even really come out yet, okay, then why aren't you leveraging your content there? Why aren't you putting your content there? And I think it's a really interesting point, because the same is true with networking from what I found as well, right? Because, as I said at the beginning, I've done networking for as long as my business has existed. But what do you think there's a hurdle? Because I think sometimes people that do networking, firstly, it's intimidating, but secondly, I've noticed potentially there's not as many young entrepreneurs or young people in the networking circles as much as potentially there used to be, or as much from my experience anyway. It might just be I just don't see them, right? And
I think we don't see them. I'm sure they are on some sort of net. They must be communicating and doing peer-to-peer stuff. I just don't think we necessarily see them all. I can't think anyone now is working in a silo. And we know from networking, don't we, but this whole silo thing, and as soon as you see a startup or small business, you think you need a tribe around you. You need people in the same boat. You need people a few years ahead, because you won't do it on your own. You can't do it on your own. Just embrace it and just talk to people in a supportive environment. And the main thing is this old adage, isn't it? All right, you've got to make mistakes, and some mistakes are good, but a lot of mistakes are just a blimmin' waste of time and money, especially when you're starting a business. And if you can just circumnavigate those mistakes by asking someone who's been there and done that, you're going to get there a lot quicker. And it's not always a mark of respect, the fact you've made a really massive mistake when really you shouldn't have done, because your peers should tell you how to avoid it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to build a tribe around, as you said, around what you do, because starting out a business, especially on your own, is hugely overwhelming really quickly. Right? Because you've suddenly got like, oh my God, I need to do all of this. Oh my God, I need to know how to market. I need to know how to do sales. I need to know how to do invoicing. I need to know how to do accounting. Suddenly I need to do taxes that I wasn't even aware of. Like, what's going on with that? Suddenly I need to know how to talk to new people. I need to do that. And then you just like sort of crumble, right? I'm sure everyone's had that for a bit, where you just sort of end up finding all the things you have to do and then just sort of go, no, because it is, but the thing I found with networking is it's not, great, fantastic if you get work from it, right? Because eventually if you go to a networking event, the goal, everyone is aware that why is someone there, right? We're there to increase the revenue of our company, and it's a form of marketing, right? It's to increase the visibility of that service or product out into a market, right? We're fully aware of that, but you don't have to go out the door saying that, right? And I think one of the main things I learned very early on was it's not about you and your business when you're in a networking event. Outside of your whole, this is what we do, this is the sector we're really interested in, thank you very much, the 1 minute bit. Outside that, it's nothing to do with business at all, really. It's more, it's building relationships, exactly. It's getting to the point where, okay, well, who do you know? Who do I know? And do I have some crossover collaboration here where I can help you, right? And I think as well, even if it's just, oh my God, I don't know how to do X. Oh my God, help! I've never done a tax return before in my life, right? Like having those people who have done it thousands of times, or are accountants, or etc., who have experience, who aren't going to come at it from a perspective of how much money can I make from this person, or how much can I make any money from this person, full stop. I think is where the magic in networking comes. I mean, for people who are looking to go into business and they like the idea, or they know it's going to be a potentially good idea for them to go to networking groups, right? So your traditional in-person, load of business people in a room having a conversation, maybe listening to a presentation, or the more digital version, which actually I prefer now. Don't tell anyone, but I actually prefer it now for multiple reasons. But the whole, whether that's through Only or other networking groups as well, I'm part of TBN or Only as well. But, what would you say to people who are hesitant on doing that? Because for me, I thought about doing it and I had to force myself to do it for the first couple of years because it was just a terrifying concept.
Is this virtual or in person?
I think they're both, because I think the scariness is similar for the concept of doing it, right? Especially when you could only do it in person, it became very challenging because you had to get over double hurdles. I think the fact that we have an online platform that you can do networking on is kind of a warm up to the then doing stuff in person if then you feel you want to go to that, which is a benefit of COVID, right? Absolute, just before I throw it back to you, absolute benefit of COVID, because if COVID hadn't happened, we would never have thought the idea of online networking would have worked, right? We just wouldn't have found a way to do it. But, I think the initial question was going to be, what, for those people because a lot of the people who listen to the podcast and watch the podcast are starting out entrepreneurs, they're people who want to start and do their own thing, right? What would you say to those people who are looking at, I need to go and do the networking thing?
Yeah, well, the advice again is firstly, I think pick the right network, pick the right one. And you won't even necessarily know what the right one is, but I think always go in with an open mind. And when I speak to a lot of people, they say, well, I've tried 5. And they go, well, what did you think of them? And 4, 3 may have been awful, 2 are okay, because at different stages. And as we know, there were different networks for different reasons. So pick the right one. How do you know what the right one is? Well, you've got to try them out. It doesn't generally cost you. Most of them you can probably go along for free or a tiny amount to go and have a look. So just spread your wings, look at social media. Where are those networks? Again, talk to fellow business owners if you know any. Certainly, it's a question I get asked a lot, in the area. What are the good ones, or what do you recommend? And again, if you probably speak to people who think, okay, you'd be right for that, but you'd be right for that one, and different personalities suit different networks. So it's not one size fits all. But I hear the good stories, I hear the bad stories, and it takes all sorts. But I think, if you're not happy with one, don't stay there and be unhappy. Move on and find something which does suit you, and don't be put off, because there's plenty of choice out there.
Yeah, because I think people can go into a networking situation, and I think there's a massive difference between this is a really uncomfortable situation because it's uncomfortable for me, or this is uncomfortable because it doesn't gel with my way of working, right, and how I work, and these kind of people and other kind of people. That's not to say that networking group for someone else wouldn't work, right? Like, I've been quite, not overly vocal, but I've I don't hide the fact that I've tried every single one pretty much, right? I've tried BNI. Personally, for me, BNI doesn't work, right? Not saying for a second that BNI doesn't work for certain businesses. For me personally, it doesn't work because my style of sales, my style of conversation, my style of building relationships with people don't work in that environment. Okay, that's fine. But then it's the same with marketing, right? Like if you think that your target demographic is on Facebook or your target demographic is on LinkedIn, okay, then try that, all in on that for one, right? Because I think when we talk about social media, and I don't want to make this all about networking, but when we talk mostly about social media, I think everyone thinks, oh, you have to start by doing, I have to make a post on Facebook, I have to make a post on Instagram, I have to make a post on LinkedIn. I think Colton talked about TikTok earlier. Oh my God, I have to do TikTok as well. What do I do? And the thing is, like, yes, ideal world, right? You should be on all of them, right? Yes, you should. But don't start with all of them, right? You should be on YouTube, right? As well, right? Start with the ones you like, that you enjoy consuming content on, right? And then, because that will trigger you to get ideas for what works on that platform, right? So if you love sitting there scrolling TikTok, okay, why not create stuff that's about what you do and just start posting it on TikTok, right? Same can be true of Facebook, same can be true of Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. There is analytically things that are going to be better than others, right? But the only way you're going to get that data is by throwing a load of stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, and then concentrating on the ones which do. And going back to networking again, the other thing is give it time, isn't it? Some people go twice and go, well, that didn't work, didn't sell anything. I think, what? You should be giving it 4, 5, 6 months, and we probably both got done business with people we met a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where you've left an impression they weren't ready then, they are ready now, and it's a long burn.
Yeah, and I think it's the same. I think it's exactly the same with content, right? Like marketing in general. Marketing is this concept of I've been talking a lot lately about marketing is not to sell anything; it's to get people ready to the point of sale, right? Right? It's to say, hey, by the way, did you know we do this? Hey, did you know this is really valuable because, right? And I think it's really important to establish the difference between the two, because sales and marketing are very close together, but they're not the same, right? One is a direct, you're ready to buy and I want you to buy from me. The other is, I'm trying to educate you on why doing video content is valuable, or joining FSB is valuable, or going to a networking event is whatever it is you do, you know, like, why do I buy from Costa, right? For example, right? Okay, because they established to me, we do coffee. Okay, cool. So if I want coffee, okay, great, I can go to Costa, right? But what else? Okay, they've established that they are a kind of community, they care about their customers, you know, those little things, remembering your order, remembering your name, asking how your day was. These are things you don't necessarily need to do, but they're customer service things that will stay in that customer's mind to allow that customer to become loyal, right, to that brand, to that business. But it comes from the business first, right? Because there is, I imagine, I've never worked at Costa in my life, but I imagine there's part of the training that says, here's your customer service training, right? Part of it is to help your customer feel special, right? And if you're a business owner, you should be doing the same thing. You should think, how are you going to make your client, how are you making your customer feel special? Because if you help them feel an emotion, they're definitely more likely to remember you than, oh yeah, Colton does this thing to do with something else, But if I make them feel something, then they're more likely to remember me long term.
Well, yeah, and it's funny how many businesses haven't grasped that, haven't they? It always amazes me. You know, where you have like-for-like businesses, one business grasps it, and it might be a supermarket, the cashier at the supermarket, and certain ones I won't name are just brilliant, and they make you feel, and others, they probably couldn't give a toss. Or that's the message they're giving you, and this whole customer experience thing now, where we've got so much more choice, and we're paying a bit more for it, and we've probably got a bit less, and we want to be felt to be sort of welcomed and warm and sort of fuzzy, as they say, you know. And that's how we're happy to spend our money. But you don't want to spend your money with someone who you think just really doesn't care about you or your money, you know, about you and the service they give you. I'm a bit of a stickler for that.
But I think it comes back to the whole, like I'll give you an example. I keep talking to other video people in networking, right? And I'll use me as the example, but the same is true if you're a bookkeeper, the same is true if you're a marketer, the same is true if you're anything you do, right? And you can go into the approach of either they're a collaborator or they're going to be a competitor of yours, right? Because technically we are both competitors of each other, right? I do video, you do video, okay. So technically we offer the same thing. But do we? Because I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it this approach. I'm going to have this approach. I'm going to focus on these things. You're going to focus on those other things. So suddenly we've just established actually you're completely different, right? Now that's going to be good for some people. It's also going to be bad for other people, for me specifically, right? The same is true vice versa, right? So what ends up happening is we can, but both video production companies or both people who do video can win here, because if I have a conversation, and I'll use an example in only, where, you know, I have a conversation with a potential client and I actually go, actually, to be honest, I don't think we're the right fit for you, but have you had a chance to talk to Andy? Because Andy's incredible at what he does. Highly recommend him. And, you know, would this be, you know, maybe they're going to be better suited for you, right? And I would hope, I don't want to speak for Andy, I would hope if he had a similar situation, he would do it the other way around.
Yeah. And the thing is, you've still been helpful to that client. You haven't got their business, but it hasn't sort of said, well, I can't do it, you know, which doesn't leave you in a good light. And I was speaking to someone the other day, a designer. She said, I've got so much work on, can't take any more work. And I said, well, who do you pass it on to? I haven't found anyone yet who I feel comfortable. So that's like it for me. It's like, okay, I'm going to find you someone, because you shouldn't be, you know, well, she didn't mind, but she had standards and she didn't want to. So I could quite see where she was coming from, but I made it my goal now to find someone as good as she is, that she likes. And then they can both pass.
So yeah, I think it's really important to establish and to understand that some of the time it's to do with the fact that the personality traits of me or Tim or anyone who you know is having that business isn't necessarily going to connect with everyone else, right? We have different personality traits. Sometimes we get on with people, sometimes we gel, sometimes we don't. But that's completely okay, because there's probably someone who does gel with someone else, right? And it's actually...
Yeah. It's funny, I was like, yeah, so I always like it because, you know, I do a lot of referrals, I take it seriously, but, you know, people always come back and say, Martin, we really got on. And you go, well, that's why I referred you. I wouldn't, if I didn't think you were going to get on, I certainly would not have referred you, you know, and it is picking, and a good referral is, are they going to get on with each other? And of course you have to generally know one of them, and you can pick it up, again, the great power of Zoom and everything else. You can pick up people's character. You don't necessarily have to meet them in person. I get a feeling for who they, you know, sort of level they're on, and it just makes for that better referral, because we're wasting my time, wasting their time, and my reputation if you get it wrong.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, something that's really, really common and can be sometimes misunderstood, and especially in the starting business when you're in that like I need work stage. And it's also about you don't have the experience yet, which I think is the key on understanding that the work will come if you continue to constantly market, continually do the other things that happen, which we discussed in this podcast, whether that's networking or whether that's expanding the business or finding ways to better suit your client or better suit, you know, better articulate your client to your client about, or potential client about how you can help them, or whether that's just doing more volume of meetings as well, right? Like some of the time we have, as you were talking about earlier, I've gone to 5 networking events, Tim, and it hasn't worked for me. But you haven't gone to 5 months worth, right? Like you haven't had the consistency yet, right? People are warm. It takes people to warm up to you, warm up to the idea of what you offer before they're going to go, here's some money, right?
Yeah, and it's a two-way thing as well, isn't it, for that relationship making? Yeah, if you go in and say, what am I going to get out of this? Want, you know, it's probably not going to work. You've got to give a bit as well.
Yeah.
Which is hopefully,
I think, you know, as a closing or soon to be closing thought, I mean, if people are looking to do networking specifically, I would recommend that you go into it thinking, how can I help as many people in this room as humanly possible, right? Whether that's a virtual room or a physical room, how can I personally help? Whether that's, hey, have you thought about doing this? Hey, I'd love to talk to you, love to get coffee, love to hear more about how I can help your business, blah, 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 blah. Because what ends up happening is then your mindset shifts to, you're going to be really grateful if you get any work back, but you don't need to assume that you're going to get work back, right? Because your assumption is the problem, right? But what also happens is you're then not, because I've noticed it's something which like you can, I think there's a spider sense, or like something which you can just tell when someone's desperate for work. And there's nothing wrong with being desperate for work and understanding that, but you need to get a handle on the fact that if that's your reality, okay, fine. But don't go into a networking event basically begging for work, because that's not the way it works. It's not going to work. And I think, you know, I remember it very vividly. When I was starting out networking, I was really nervous, wasn't having a very good week, blah, 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 whatever. I still went, and it was really hard, bro, right, to still go. But there's some times where you still have to do it, and you still have to act as if you're fully booked and act as if everything's going really, really well. And it's not about being fake. It's about putting out what you are capable of, right, in the best way. And I think it's something which not a lot of people have the confidence or practice to, but they get in their own head a lot. And the thing is, you are the only person who knows how well your business is doing. Categorically. That or your business partners, you're the only, like, people in the business are the only people who actually categorically know, how well am I doing or not? How much work do I have or not? How much cash flow do I have or not? Right? So by going into that meeting confidently, whether you have loads of money in the bank, loads of projects in the pipeline, or none, is going to be identical to everyone else. Because they have no idea. And frankly, none of their business, right? But it's about establishing that and then understanding that you can be confident and you still can talk about, even if you're talking about theoretical clients, right? Let's say, for example, I'm in a very early stage of my business and I've done a load of free work for people, but they've had incredible results, right? I can still talk about clients we've worked with. No, technically they haven't been paying clients. Have I done work for someone and has it had a result? Yes.
Have you helped somebody who made a difference? Yeah,
so say, oh, well, we had a client the other day that did, and then you go along on a little story, and in that the other person had listening to you, it's going to go, okay, I can see how this could work in my business. But, just before we wrap up, the thing is that most people, I think, misunderstand in marketing, but in networking specifically, is ask them questions about themselves. Because if you're nervous about talking about your business, then don't. Ask other people about theirs.
Listen. Yeah. No, always listen.
And I think you'll find that humans as a concept, we love talking about ourselves, right? So if you just go in with some prepped questions that are going to, oh, what do you do? Oh, how has it been the last couple of years? Oh, how have you, and then listen. And I don't mean like kind of listen with one ear. I mean like focus in and listen on what they're saying, and then try and remember things. Right? Like if it's they talked about their wife or they talked about their, their family being ill or they just went on a holiday or little details, when you see them again in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whenever that is, say, oh, how was the holiday? Or, if they talk about, oh, we're going to go to France in next week. Oh, the kids are really looking forward to it, etc., etc. When you see them again, in a month, bring that up. And it's those little things that I think really help build that relationship with people, because we hold on to those little, oh my God, they remembered that we went to France.
It is good, and this is rookie era, and you see it like, people who are new, the rookie era, just talk about you. Don't go in there and just talk about you and your business. No, it's the worst thing you can do. Just listen yourself and learn what everyone else is doing, what they're talking about. And again, it goes back to nerves, doesn't it? But I've had many a conversation which probably lasted, let's say, 20 minutes, and not once have I actually talked about what I've been asked or talked about what I do. Because again, I'm just listening. I want to, I'm getting information. I'm thinking, how can I help these people? And it's just funny after you think, they didn't ask me what I did. Makes me laugh, but it's a rookie
especially era. I think if you're especially doing market research, right? Especially in the early days when you're trying to work out who is your target audience, where does your product fit into the global business market, right? Like, where do you do? Okay, well, go in and ask what their issues are. If you're a marketer, go and ask, what are your marketing challenges right now? And maybe not phrase it like that. That's a very like direct way to phrase it. But, how do you get business?
It's an obvious one, but people don't do it. Yeah, you've got a product. Who's going to buy it? Have you asked people what they think of it? No. You just assume they're going to buy it. Yeah. No, get out there. Walk the streets, sit down with people in cafes. What do you think about this? Yeah.
And I think it's really important, and it will build your confidence. By doing that, it will passively build your confidence, right? And, not every entrepreneur or every business owner is an extroverted person, but you still need to be some level of extrovert to be able to build those relationships within business, right? We're not saying you magically need to become, and you love it, right? Like, that might be a byproduct, right? You might actually just love networking, you love building relationships, you love talking to people, but that will come through time. It's not magically going to go from, oh my God, I'm very introverted and I just would rather be by myself, which is completely fine, to then suddenly, oh my God, I want to talk to everyone and everyone's my best friend. It's not like that. It doesn't just, and like everything, and I think one of the key points here with in this podcast is it's not going to be a quick process, right?
No, but it does come back to this tribe again, doesn't it? And a trusted network of business where you can say, look, guys, be really honest, okay? If you think it's crap, just say it. I did it this morning. I was going to do a social media post, sent it to a trusted friend and said, look, be really, really honest. Is this rubbish or not? And I got a really good answer back. I won't tell you what the answer was. And you can do that, and we can help each other. And you hopefully get the honest opinion, not just the opinion they think is going to make you feel better. We're beyond that now. It's like, let's be brutally honest. Come on, we know each other well. Don't hold back. Give it your hardest. Yeah. Network.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for the time, Tim. I mean, what I'd like to do on the end is just give you an opportunity to ask me a direct question or throw in a topic for us to discuss for a couple of minutes before we do wrap up, and do the whole website social plug bit at the end. But is there anything that you want to ask? Or anything you ask me?
About
Anything.
you? What, in terms of business,
Anything you like.
personal?
Completely open.
Can it be really
Go for it.
weird?
Go for it. Go for it. Why not?
I don't know what I asked you. What you ate for what your favourite meal is, or if you could only eat one cuisine, which
I
cuisine
haven't
would it
had
be?
that one in ages. What jumped to mind was some form of like pasta or pizza, right? Because Italian food, for whatever reason, has been my favourite for the longest time. Honestly, I don't know if I can only pick one. I haven't given it much thought, but I suppose it would be a pasta dish or some pasta like pizza dish. Hopefully a healthier,
so if you have one, the
healthy-ish
Italian,
variant
yeah.
of that, so I don't magically put on £200. But you know,
So if you could eat nothing else for the rest of your life, it would be the
it'd be
Italian.
something
Yeah.
Italian.
Okay.
But yeah, where should people reach out to you if they want to maybe, they want to hear about FSB, they want to, maybe just talk to you a little bit more about networking, or, just want to have a chat. Where's best for people to do that?
I don't know if you post any details, but an email or LinkedIn, whatever, I can send you.
Yep, so that'll all be below if people do want to follow on. So
You probably should have all my tags, but put on what you want. Just going to say, yeah, I mean, technically, I live in Salisbury. Sort of my main patch is sort of Southampton, New Forest way.
Welcome back, ladies and gents. I hope you had a fantastic day today, and I hope you enjoyed that podcast. It was great to have Tim on, so thank you for Tim if you're watching back, and I'll see you very, very soon for a brand new episode. Some brand new content. We've got lots of fun stuff planned, and I'll see you very soon.